Yeah, 360.
Yeah, I'm
Be like round and round and round we go. And where we stop, I'm like nobody knows. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We tell the real truth, you know what I mean? This the breakdown, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need. We talking politics and news, and music reviews, as well as ratchet TV. You know how we do, and music from some artists you never heard of. But when you hear them, you gon' show them some love. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need.
Yeah. This episode is about white privilege. So if you don't know what it is, you'll get your dose today. Today's hosts, Mercer Prescott, Mercedes Wright, and Khristopher Blue. Special guests, Najee and Emma. 360 degrees. Yeah. And welcome to another episode of The Urban Breakdown. Today's episode focused on white privilege. Merc, set him off.
All right. One thing I will say is that, and I was having dinner with a friend of mine last night who just happens to be white, and I talked about what we were going to talk about on the, on today's show is going to be about white privilege, and she asked me, "How are you going to start the show?" Right? And she asked me that because it's a difficult subject to talk about.
Right.
I was talking with another friend of mine who was also white, and we were on this subject, and I told him, well, he was telling me how difficult it was to explain to his co-workers, his friends and stuff like that about white privilege, because they don't believe that it actually exists, or they get defensive about it. And I told them that it's not their fault that they feel that way, because it's not like people go out and apply for a white privilege card, or that they want to be treated differently than others. It's just something that just happens. It's just part of the system. What makes it broken is the fact that they don't acknowledge that. They don't feel that exists, because they don't want to be connected to any sort of racism. But by ignoring the problem, it almost feels like they're complicit with racism. And then this is where it comes to our part of it as minorities, African Americans or what have you, is that it's easy to get frustrated in that conversation, because it's easy for us to say, well, if you don't agree with my stance, then you're a racist, and that's not helping the conversation at all. So my thing is this: if you're how can I put this? So if you don't like, let's say Black Lives Matter, you don't agree with them, and you come up and you just say, well, why do Black Lives matter more than anybody else's? All lives matter. I can debate you on that. That's easy to debate. But if you just come right out and just say, well, I think Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, that's not something I could debate you on. Because if you're that extreme to the right, there's really nothing I could do to change your mind. And I think it's that way by design, because they know that if people communicate, that eventually, cooler heads will prevail. But the problem is, it's still there. So we just need to find a way to get that conversation out there without branding those people as racist. And before I go on, I want you guys to weigh in on this. Have you ever gotten that frustrated with somebody talking about white privilege? Does that subject ever come up for you guys with your friends or co-workers or anything like that?
One, don't really have that many white friends. In fact, I'm hard-pressed to say I have any. Not by choice, just by design. Two, I went to a play the other day called Just Another Lynching, presented by my friend Jegetto. A very powerful play done through puppetry, of all things. And it had a lot of themes much like this, in which the crowd was able to participate in a discussion with the actors and the production staff regarding, the play itself and the themes in the play and the symbolisms in the play and the actualities of the past and how it's very correlates with what's going on today. And, you know, some people were just like that. They were like, white privilege, yeah, you know, one of the the voice of the storyline was a Caucasian male. He was saying his perspective and writing from his perspective and understanding that, you know, he could do that and it would, you know, raise the bar of what it was by him speaking it, the tragedy of this man's lynching that was his friend in the storyline. Also, the biggest thing that came out of it is that white people aren't ignorant to their white privilege, but act like it. As meaning that they don't think it exists, but all the evidence in the world exists that shows that it's in support of white privilege. If we know it, why don't you know it? So they're saying that, you know, so the overall theme that came out of it is that, you know, you're just above it all, so it doesn't impact you, so you don't think about it, and you're not pressed about it.
You know, it's funny, we talked about that last week a little bit about, and before I go on, I'm sorry, Emma, did you have anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah, I was about to ask if I could contribute.
Yeah.
I would say, in my experience, you know, I lived in a little bit more of a progressive town for a little bit. It's a little bit more liberal. Mm-hmm. In Pittsburg, and so yeah, it would be actually a talking point sometimes at like parties, because, you know, social issues would come up a lot, and I would always find that it was usually just something to talk about and to, you know, but not really to get into. Like if I were to talk about my experience or what I had noticed or exactly what that meant, or maybe some solutions, like people would quickly get disinterested. It would be more like, oh, it's not fair, oh, things are so terrible. And then I would be like, well, you know, like, what do you think we could do? Or, you know, how do you think this impacts people's lives? And then it would kind of get a little bit more uncomfortable at that point. So I think in my experience, there is like a certain group of people out there who knows it exists and willingly admits it. But as far as trying to understand that perspective, it's just so much beyond them because they have never been like immersed in the culture. So it just is too heavy of a topic for them to really actually delve into.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, with white privilege, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I can have that conversation with my friend because I've known her for like 25 years. So we can have that conversation. That's not a problem. I couldn't have that conversation with someone who I've only known for like 2 or 3 years, you know, because it would just get instantly uncomfortable and they would just want to desperately change the subject, you know. But I think in this country we have a whole thing of, if it's too hard, don't do it, you know. And it's not a matter of just talking to a couple of people to solve the whole issue of white privilege. It's an entire system. But then again, progressives have done a good job of changing the entire system. If not, I'd be at work right now because I'd be working 7 days a week, because we'd still be, you know, we wouldn't have the labor laws we have now, because some people saw something that was impossible and they said, well, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And this could be done. And I think, and maybe some people, and they may not admit it, but they may feel that if that privilege is taken away, that they may take a cutback, that they may lose out, you know. And I don't think that's and that's kind of a little bit far-fetched. It was good when I thought it, but when I said it, it seems a little bit far-fetched, but because that's really not the case. But some people do feel that way, you know. They do like the status quo because it benefits them, and it's not something they thought about until they thought about it. And they thought about it, and they're like, well, if he's going to come up, that means I'm going to go down. And I'm like, that's not really the case. But, you know, it's a complicated matter. People don't talk about it enough. Because just like you said, Emma, when it starts to get uncomfortable, they start to squirm, and then they want to change the subject or talk about something else.
Yeah, it's only at face value for sure.
Yeah. And I was, you know, before the show we were talking about what was her name? Betty Jo Shelby, is that her name? The one who shot Terrence Crutcher in Oklahoma and who got away with it. She literally got away with murder because he wasn't armed, you know. And yes, he was on, I mean, don't get me wrong, he was on drugs, you know, but he was walking away from her and she thought that he was, I guess, like reaching for a gun out of his car, and he turns out he didn't have a weapon, and she just shot him. She overreacted and basically just murdered the man. Now, my thing is this. They get her up on manslaughter charges. Jury of her peers acquit her, right? And then she got it expunged from her record. So now she can go on to other police departments and kill other people, and it won't even show up on her background report. And the way they talked about it was basically, she said it was important, talking about her lawyer, she said it was important for Shelby to have that smear on her name removed from public view. You know what a smear on your name is? If you're Richard Gere and people, and then sorry for being so vulgar, but John Oliver brought this point up. If you talk about Richard Gere, what you think about is, you know, supposedly there was a horrible rumor that went out about him that he liked to have gerbils put up his butt, which is ridiculous, right? But that rumor was prevalent. That's a smear because it didn't happen. No one got hurt. No gerbils were hurt in this rumor, right? Because it didn't happen. That's a smear. You murdered a man and they have it on video. That's not a smear. That happened. She shot that man. But the system coddled her. You know, they figured, well, just because she was acquitted by a jury of her peers, I'm putting peers in air quotes, that she got away with it, and now it's just such a minor matter. Oh, I shot a black guy. What are you going to do? Black guys, right? They're all over the place. So it's just the nonchalant nature of this whole thing. And you know what? She's going to shoot somebody else, and it's just going to be the same thing over again. And there's no faith in law enforcement because of that. But here's the thing. If you're an African American, you don't get that same benefit of the doubt. And I was trying to find that article before we started today. A pair of African American cops had a traffic stop, and they ended up shooting someone, and a child ended up dying. Right? They gave that cop, the one who pulled the trigger, the other one is still going through his trial, but the one who actually pulled the trigger, they gave him 40 years in prison. You know, I think there are like first-degree murderers who get less time than 40 years. But if you're a minority and you commit something like that, they tend to drop the hammer on you. Like what's going to happen with the case of the Australian lady who got shot. You know, this guy is probably, you know, sweating bullets because, you know, he's a Muslim and he shot a white woman. He's as good as dead. I don't know if his state has a death penalty, but they may bring it back just for him. Now, the thing is, the fact that I'm just saying that, you may be thinking, well, what am I basing that on? I'm basing it on the fact that there are all these examples and people just they're just not reading the signs, you know. Do you guys have anything to add before I go on?
No, not regarding that. I mean, when you're in power, when you're at a certain level, everything below you isn't going to be that relevant unless it affects your bottom line. I mean, let's see. If I'm visiting Mexico and I see the plight of the Mexicans while I'm paying $1 for something that's probably literally $8 or $9 or $10 in America, you know, because of tariffs and all that. Am I really sensitive to their plight? Probably not. Am I happy that I'm being able to get a wear for $1 versus 10? Of course I am. And that I get to bring all these crazy souvenirs back to the homies, but I'm only paying pennies on a dollar, literally. I'm not thinking about the long hours these people are putting in, the little bit of food that they're eating, the terrible health care that they have, the violence that they're exposed to on a daily basis. Is that in my mind state? So when I can zoom out and truly understand white privilege just based on my experience as a tourist in this whole world that I've been in, and I've touched every single continent except Africa.
Yeah. And I will say this, one thing I will disagree with you on that, and it's a nitpicking thing. Actually, Mexico has universal health care, and there was a story I read years ago about people who retired to Mexico to get free health care because they can't get that health care in the United States. Other than that, everything else is on point.
Well, I was in all these places. If they have it, they don't know they have it. Not looking at their bodies, not looking at their diabetes, not looking at their amputations, not looking at their teeth, not looking at their overall health, the jaundice in their eyes.
Yeah.
I would just add regarding the police, I think this stuff has all been going on for so long, and the precedent has been set, and unfortunately, it's one of those things that we've just become desensitized to. After, I think, the first two cases, it just became something on a news feed, something that was almost normalized. It's straight. Yeah. So much hatred and so much conversation, and it still does to a certain extent, but once that precedent is set, it's set not only for the legal system, but how we deal with it as well. If people would have made a little bit more of a ruckus, and then they did, with Freddie Gray and everything, but then you see how that was responded to as well.
Right.
And labeled, and, people are scared to speak out, or they just don't see it as something that they can get an impact on. And once that's really in people's minds, it's almost a form of learned helplessness where, nobody really wants to do anything, and it's almost just an invisible issue because it's like, we don't have enough of our own knowledge and wisdom to think for ourselves and put our own labeling on this issue. We have too much faith in the justice system because it's like, well, this is what they've said. It keeps happening over and over, so they must be right, we must be wrong. And I think that's just another case where we need to raise our awareness and do some thinking on our own.
Right.
One of the points that was also made as a play I went to the other day called Just Another Lynching by the artist Jegetto was that this country was founded on this type of racism. This country was founded on utter violence against others, stepping on the backs and necks of others in order to build it up. It is so ingrained into the American system that to overcome it almost means you have to break the system. That every law was made to suppress. The penal system was designed to oppress. Basically, another form of slavery. So the system itself is designed to be that way, and it's probably, we think, violence against others is not normal. It's not right, but it's so ingrained, it is their norm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
I remember somebody told me, I never saw this written, but somebody told me, that's an elder, that the police system, when first designed, was designed to hurt African Americans who consider themselves free and to suppress them or to bring them back into slavery. If I'm not, something to that effect. Merck probably knows more about that state of time than I do, as I'm not a Native American. But just the ideology, just looking at, past history of police interactions with African Americans, just looking at interactions today, I can see how that's true.
Yeah.
It's just a different type of lynching. Instead of rope, we're using guns.
Yeah, who really needs to, once the Willie Lynch thing went through, like the document, who really needs to use force whenever the minds are still enslaved. And that's true, I think, for pretty much all stratas of society, not just the African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
That's real talk right there.
Yeah.
I got my Instagram post for today.
and the point you guys make about normalizing stuff, that certain things are just business as usual. Like, I was reading up on whitefish. Whitefish is the the electric company who is now getting a $300 million contract to rebuild the power grid in Puerto Rico, right? This electric company has 2 people in it. 2. And they're in Montana. So you figure, so all the people who are going there, they're contractors, right? So you figure, how did that company get, and here's the thing, right? A reporter obtained a copy of the contract between Whitefish and the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, and this is printed in New Republic. They said Whitefish reportedly is charging $300 an hour for a subcontracted lineman, $462 an hour for a subcontracted supervisor, and $400 per worker per day for food and housing. The contract also shields Whitefish from legal liability if they screw up the job, and prevents government authorities from auditing the company, according to the document. So you figure, how did a 2-man operation get a $300 million contract and have no liability whatsoever? It's because the Secretary of the Interior is Ryan Zinke, right? Ryan Zinke is friends with the owner. And the owner is also friends with a major donor to Donald Trump's campaign. So that's how that company was able to get a no-bid contract, right? So someone like me sees that, and I'm outraged. I'm just like, that is ridiculous. I was even thinking some of our boys over here at Duke Energy were going to probably go to Puerto Rico, you know, because you have a company, or maybe even a large company across the country who is used to dealing to electricity to millions of people at a time. So you figure you have 80 linemen total who are going to restore electricity to an island that has 3 million people in it. But the problem is that some people see this sort of thing as just business as usual. They see the government and they see corruption and they figure, well, that's just how government works. So they see the system, they see cops getting over, and it's happening so much, that's just how the system works. What are you going to do? Can't change it. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, it's also another type of privilege, right? For me to have my voice heard, I'm supposed to have a vote to have my voice heard. So basically, my vote is nullified by some jackass with a lot of money who has a direct line to the president. And one more quick point before we move on. There was a Chinese dissident. His name is Gao Wengai, if I pronounced that right, which I probably didn't. He is a dissident from China. He's also a multimillionaire businessman. He's wanted back in China for some crime. Maybe he did it, maybe he didn't. It's the Chinese government. You never know what they're all about, right? But they want him back really bad. So one of Donald Trump's, I think it was one of his donors, right? The Chinese government lobbied this donor to talk to Trump and say, listen, have Trump extradite this guy back to us, right? This guy got a letter from the Chinese government, and this guy went to Donald Trump and personally handed the letter from the Chinese government and put it in Donald Trump's hands. So Donald Trump, at the behest of a powerful donor and the Chinese government, was going to return this guy back to China until one of his aides told him, hey, this guy who you're going to send back, I'm not making something to be funny, he's a paying member of Mar-a-Lago. So now Trump doesn't want to send him back. This guy, in other words, this guy who supposedly, and like I said, I'm not really going to get into his guilt or innocence. The Chinese government, I don't really trust much that they say. All their food has lead in it. You never know the effects. But this guy was all set to be sent back until he found out, oh, this guy's a paying member of Mar-a-Lago. He's putting money directly in my pocket. So all I have to do to have my voice heard is to get a Mar-a-Lago membership. And I'm in. I could just see Donald Trump on Wednesday be like, yo, Don, check this out, yo. There's a lot of guns in Chicago. We need to strengthen these gun laws so they don't have to go to Indiana and get guns and shoot people in Chicago. But that's not going to happen because I don't have Mar-a-Lago money. And that's another type of privilege altogether. Not just about race, but also about money. Because it's the moneyed interests that control the government. No one gives a shit about us. You know. Not unless it's election time and they need our vote. And other than that, they don't care. You know, because if you don't have money, you don't have a voice as far as they're concerned. One of the worst things that happened to America was when Citizens United passed, which basically said, hey, money is free speech. You know.
Basically.
My speech is in prison. Watch out now.
I'll have to give an IOU for my speech. Because I ain't got it. But
all right. Well, let's move on to the next segment.
Mm-hmm.
Emma, let's talk about your story. Where does it begin?
My story, okay. So this is a little bit, I guess, off topic to what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. I was responding to a Facebook post that Mercedes had posted about if you had, dear white people, like if you have one question to black people, what is it? And you'll get it answered. So the question I posed was kind of about interracial dating. And so basically I want to know, and maybe I can get some answers here because no one had really replied to my comment on the post.
Whoa, are you assuming that we're black?
Yeah, I did assume that. You caught me.
Don't do her like that, y'all. I'm fine with Mercedes.
All right,
so I commented on the post and I asked. So basically, I'll tell you. I asked. I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory. So I have dated a black man. We dated for about 2 years. We lived together for a year, and we kind of went through a really hard time in our relationship where he didn't really want to. Well, it's not that he really didn't want to, but he acted very different whenever he brought me around. Hello?
Yep.
Okay, I was hearing another voice. I'm sorry. But he would act very different whenever he brought me around his black friends and his black families. He didn't really flirt with me or touch on me like he would when we were in private or, you know, at a kind of more mutual location. And so I accused him of being racist towards me, and because, you know, he's very, very pro-black. You know, he knows a lot about his history, and he is very proud and very knowledgeable about, you know, just the whole situation of, I guess you could call it, white privilege and, you know, the history of white supremacy. And that's one thing that I've always liked about him, you know, that he has just such a staunch love for where he came from. But, you know, so he pretty much adamantly denied that he had any type of racism towards white people. And after about a year or so of this kind of going on, you know, I kind of just blew it aside as maybe he doesn't really like PDA that much. But as it kept coming and coming up, you know, the one day I just said, like, do you wish that I was black? And he said no at first. But then, you know, he came back later, months later, and he was like, you know, you asked that, and I thought about it, and yeah, I do wish you were black. And, you know, we broke up over other issues, but I do think that this had a little bit to do with it. And, you know, we've talked about it since then, and he has admitted to me that, like, yeah, it is really hard to be pro-black and date a white woman because it's just so looked down upon. And, you know, I see it too, and that's kind of what I want to ask is for those people out there who are very much in the pro-black movement or even not so much, like, do you think that you look down on a man for dating a black or a white woman if he is black? And do you think that's a part of, you know, Afrocentricity, ethnocentricity, for your own kind, or what is it, and how do you justify it? Because personally, I mean, I feel kind of like it is looked down upon, and I don't agree with it, because I mean, they say all types of things about how I could never understand his plight, never really love him for him because I don't know. But I completely disagree, because, you know, I've studied and learned, and I feel like, honestly, I'm more conscientious and taking more action than a lot of black people out there, and I just think that's an unfair generalization that should be stopped.
For me, actually, you guys go ahead first, because you know me, I'm kind of chatty, so you guys start.
Okay, I'll go ahead and just give my take on it. I really didn't respond, and I was the one that made the post, and I third I agree. But yes, in the black community, it's frowned upon only when black men tend to place white women on a pedestal over black women. Not necessarily. I'm okay with interracial dating. In fact, I feel like it is proven to make for a stronger generation, future generation, when we mix with one another. However, there are times where those black men who date white women will treat them more superior than they have either their black baby mamas and their black mothers and their black sisters and things of that nature. That's where the problem comes in for us in our community. It's frowned upon because a lot of them do that. A lot of them outwardly say, you know, okay, you know what, I'm done with black women, where are the white women? So as a woman in general, no skin color involved, I don't think we're that different. And what also upsets me is a lot of times when they place white women on a pedestal, they actually place them on a disrespectful pedestal, placing you guys in a place of either ignorance or submissiveness, or as if you're spineless to what a black man wants from you, or any man for that matter. They place you as a spineless being, and I think that's very disrespectful. A lot of times they'll say, oh, a white woman will do this and you won't. Well, it's not that. Women in general, we're going to stand up for what we feel is right. We've been fighting for our rights for a very long time, whether we're black or white, and black women more so, because we're trying to fight for being, you know, rights of being black and female. But with our own men, we shouldn't have to fight for that. So we definitely deserve some type of respect, and women in general deserve respect from men. I feel like men as a whole, just, you know, not all men, but those men who have this ridiculous mindset do look down on women a certain type of way, and I feel like they put white women, they uphold you guys, but they put you guys in this box that I think is totally disrespectful, stating that you guys are more submissive or more willing to do things that black women aren't, but in a disrespectful manner, almost as if you guys are spineless. So it goes both ways. They disrespect us as they're black women, and they also disrespect white women as if they're spineless and dumb. That is my outlook on it. I really don't like it either way, but that's my part, and that's my take on it. So whoever wants to go next team.
So just as a rebuttal or as a follow-up, so would you say a man who is in the pro-black movement, because, you know, like the Black Panthers, they didn't allow white people into their groups, would you kind of have the same mentality of a man who is, you know, aligned with his people and trying to, you know, be that voice in the community, be that leader? Would you follow him or listen to him if he was dating a white woman?
Sure. And
me, honestly, yes, because I know he knows his history, and he has knowledge of who he is and where he came from. It's the question, can she fight alongside him? If we're standing in a group of 10, coupled, and you're the only white woman in this group of 10, and we have the white supremacists or these white nationalists coming towards us, how would you respond? Of course, you know what the white nationalists and the supremacists are doing is wrong. Of course you do. But you're on the side of these black people, where as a minority, we're a smaller number anyway. Do you fight with us based upon the knowledge of our culture and what we've been through, or are you doing it because you love that black man and it's only because you love him? Or is it as a whole? You understand what we are going through. I just feel like the black struggle is best fought beside black man and black woman, in my opinion. Now, again, I have no problem with interracial dating, but when it comes down to the struggle in the community that we have, you know, as black people, sometimes I feel like, I don't know, I also feel like it places a white woman in an awkward situation, especially one who has black children. Like, how do you choose? we don't have to choose beside our black men because we're black and we're fighting the same struggle and jumping the same hurdles. But how do you choose how to fight a problem that really isn't necessarily your struggle?
Yeah, I mean, I really can't agree with that. Because if you are a lover of justice and you are a lover of man and mankind, then, it's not really an issue at that point. I do take it as my issue because we are one world. We have, one source of water, one source of air, and I view that as ultimately more important than that capitalistic structure we have. It needs to be ended, and it's needed that for a long time. So I think that we only came together on our love because we have a shared love for these broader issues and for justice.
Which I totally agree with you. But you guys know there's a white nationalist rally going on in Nashville, Tennessee today. I think it's some big, excuse me, I didn't mean to do that in the phone, but there's like some big white nationalist rally. Now, I work for it's Tennessee, and there's this big issue. We got a lot of African-American people there, and a lot of African-American people, let's be real, we work in call centers and different things of that nature. So there's just a lot of black people that aren't willing to, even go to work because of this whole thing. And after what happened up in Virginia, nobody's willing to even go into Nashville today because of that. So whether you are black or white in this situation, I don't know how would you fight against it, because the white nationalists, let's be real, they're radical. They're definitely, in my opinion, especially after what happened up in Virginia, they're definitely terrorists in my eyes. You're killing people just to place a point where that you're white. We get it, so what exactly are you fighting for? One guy explained it or whatever, and I'm just like, he said he feels like the white race is dying out too fast because of the mixing. Okay, and there's no point in what he's saying. I'm like, in your point, I think what was the statistic, by 2035 that white people will become a minority in this country, and I think that's what they're fighting for, because we are very close to 2035, but I'll only be like 50 years old then, so 50, 60, whatever, so I won't, that's not too far from now. So it's just one of those things where, like, how do you I don't even know how to address something like that, because the hatred behind it is just too much. But again, my outlook is, I guess, like you said, love for justice, of course, but just as I don't even know how you would choose sides. I know you wouldn't choose the side of the white supremacists, being a white person who does not believe what they believe or will not follow the hatred that they, are based upon. But it's just, I don't know. It's just a hard topic, and I just feel like as a black woman, I have to protect my black men, and can she do it like I can? Can she really stand up for everything that he's fighting against the way the black woman can?
I'll
that
put it
doesn't
like
have to be
this.
answered.
Right. My niece is black, of course. Well, there's no such thing as, of course, in today's family structure, but my niece is black, and she prefers to date white men. Matter of fact, her baby daddy is, they're not together anymore, but, her baby daddy's white, right? And they live in Georgia. So they have a biracial child, and even while they were dating, they still used to get, like, people driving by, black and white, who would just see them together on the street and be like, date your own race. And my niece inherited my cynicism. She would just look at her watch and be like, oh, did we go 88 miles an hour and end up back in 1955? Like, who still thinks like that? It's, to me, I find nothing wrong with interracial dating. I mean, my next girlfriend may not be black. She may be white. She may be Chinese. She may be Middle Eastern. Who knows? But I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, so my outlook on this is very, very different. People didn't really care about that sort of thing. They did back in the day in my old town, but not when I was growing up. So interracial dating where I'm from is much different than interracial dating in Georgia. You understand? So even if you had somebody who was Afrocentric, now, if you're in a rap group, that's one thing, because you got to keep up that image. But in real life, that sort of thing should not matter. If you respect, if you're with a black man, and you understand his struggle, unless you're actually black, you may not understand fully, but you don't really have to understand fully, to me. And that's my whole thing, because we on the way it's, to me, it's like you don't have to. Put it like this: they say that African American history is U.S. history. You understand? We all live in the same country. We all go through the same struggles, and some of us go through more unique struggles. Like if you're an African American dealing with the cops, But I don't really feel that race is a factor as far as fighting for someone that you love in a certain situation. But then again, I'm just a dreamer. I still have a tiny sliver of hope left that this will all work out. And for me, in the end, race is just not something that just gets in the way of that sort of thing if there's someone that you love. I mean, if you have friends who feel that way, yeah, get new friends.
Well, I think it's important to highlight some of the historical basis for why we have that issue. If you can recall, most of the issues that we have with race and dating outside of race actually started back during pre-slavery, during slavery, where the idea was to sort of convey that blacks were inferior. And so one of the ways they would do that is by keeping blacks from learning. That supported the idea they were stupid, but if you're withholding the books, you can support your argument because you're part of the problem. And so all of this was actually just rooted in trying to keep the races apart. It's not that one race is any better than the other. But, when you're in the business of making money, a lot of times you'll sell your soul in order to do that. And so you take somebody like Thomas Jefferson, who stated that the two races can never mix, that they can never get along. And so he supported the idea of sending blacks back to Africa. But now, remember the lady by the name of Sally Hemings. She was the mistress of Thomas Jefferson. She had 6 children by him. So apparently, that idea, he was just putting it out there, really meant very little, because at night he was sneaking out to be with this lady. And then the other thing is, from a biological standpoint, the sperm on every male, regardless of race, is only compatible with a female egg. So it doesn't matter if it's a white woman, a black woman, a white man, a black man. They can procreate because that's the way it was designed by the Creator. So when we get to this point where we are sort of dividing ourselves among ourselves about who to date, who not to date, you're crossing a line that you really don't understand fully, because, as you said, this really boils down to an issue of whether you love somebody or not. Conditional love is not love. And I understand that some people would prefer to date somebody of a particular race. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. The problem, though, comes in is if that person or that group is not available for you to date, then what are you going to do? Are you going to, just throw and just roll over and die? Or are you going to say, hey, look, you know what? I'm looking for love. I'm not necessarily looking. It may not come in the color or the package that I think it's going to come in. So we have to be mindful that we ought to be flexible about those type of things, because in the end, it's the love that you want. It's the love that you need, and it's the love that you're craving.
Is that a mic drop?
Yeah, I'm
so many perspectives. I forgot the question.
Yeah, I really love that you said that.
I guess I came on a little late, so I didn't get to mine, but I did have one that was similar, but it was more so about, I read this article where this white family, they had a white son, their own biological child, and adopted 2 black children. The people in their church, all white church, were saying, oh, well, those little black kids won't grow up in the hood and ghetto and jail now that you're raising them, now that you have them out of the system. This family had to end up moving to, they hated, they realized, I'm really attending church with a bunch of racists. So they ended up moving to an inner city, you know, in a much better area for the children, and, you know, still, you know, in a very nice neighborhood where the kids could, you know, be accustomed to their black culture and see other black people, because where they were living before, they would see nothing but the white neighbors and white people they went to church with. So when they moved, everything was better. This white family was better. The black kids were better. My question is, do you think that, you know, any race of people can raise a complete family of a different race? I've even seen this thing recently where this black couple adopted 8 white siblings. For all of them were, I don't know how that mama gave up 8 kids, Mercy, but she did, and they adopted all 8 of them. Do you think anyone of any race can raise properly and still instill the proper cultural whatever aspect or knowledge into their children if they are of a different race?
You know, my answer is going to be yes, because I'm the optimist. But I mean, it just all really depends on the parents, you know, and how important it is for these kids to be steeped in their heritage. And other than that, it's the matter of just going to the library. You know, it's not could be it's not that big of a deal, but it all depends on. Oh, go ahead, Blue.
How important is it really? I mean, if that's the way they raise their children, they're raising their children in a certain light. Do they really need to be exposed to the atrocities of their African American experience? Maybe, maybe not. I've met and dated, I'm sure, women who might have been biracial, who didn't have any exposure to their black side, and then they went to college and they might have got exposed to it somewhat. They didn't seem any more disheartened by not knowing the experience or learning the experience later than me, who grew up in it all my life when I came to America.
Well, if I could sort of add to that, I think the relevance when you are talking about raising a child of another race in your home, the problem comes in is when that child has to go out into the real world. You know, at home is one thing, but when that child has to leave home and be confronted with people who do not subscribe to, you know, that type of thing, they are going to be subjected to a lot of these insults and different things, and they may not really understand it. So I think you have to prepare children just in general about what they should expect. And the world is not, you know, roses and peaches. There's some mean people out here. But your foundation always has to be a love relationship with that child. And once you show them that and you continue to show them that, then when they see these things that come up, they're going to be reminded. It's not necessarily going to be easy. It's not going to make the pill easier to swallow just because you tell them that. But you are preparing them and you're letting them know. And in terms of culture, you know, culture is basically one group's way of doing something. You may like the fried egg. I may like it boiled. That's my culture. I like it boiled. It doesn't really matter. You know, so you don't necessarily have to go and look out and find what's in the white culture because you got a white child. So, well, you know, I got to teach you how to do this. No, just teach them your way. Teach them how you do things. And, you know, that's appropriate. The bottom line is, you know, is this child being shown love? And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's going to matter.
Which I agree with. The only problem that I would have is either child, like someone said earlier, either child going out into the real world, getting a job, being around these, you know, other adults who, you know, have their own mindset about what race is and what people should or shouldn't be, and them frowning upon maybe a black child who so-called acts white. You know how people are ignorant, or a white child that acts black because he was raised by these black parents. Like, people are gonna, you know, definitely, like, what's the word, stigmatize them, or they're gonna treat them a certain type of way because of who they are in their household. They have no choice but to be who they are out here in the real world as well. And people are going to look at them differently. People are going to treat them different. That's why I said it's to at least have the knowledge of what the child is walking into. That's no different than me teaching my black children about some of the. Now, I tell them not to go back to school repeating half of what I teach them, but, like, we celebrated Juneteenth in my household with the history of it and everything. Most parents don't do that. I don't know if the black community is afraid to do it, but they'll celebrate 4th of July real quick. They'll pull out them grills and flip some burgers with no problem when that independence had nothing to do with the independence of black people. But they don't really celebrate Juneteenth like that. I'm pretty sure it's only a handful of black people that do, a couple million. But things like that. I'm teaching my black children our culture in our household that they're not going to otherwise learn in school. That's another problem. Those same children in this mixed household, they're not going to learn anything about themselves, no matter what race they are, in their school system. Not the truth anyway. White kids ain't learning the truth either. They're teaching all of our kids, no matter what color, the same lies in school.
I mean, you figure in Texas right now they're trying to teach in the textbooks that slaves are just undocumented workers, and I'm not even trying to be funny. That was a big thing a couple years ago. They were trying to do the history books and make it about states' rights, and then they were just undocumented workers. We didn't whip them or anything. They just came over. It's like the Mexicans now. They're just undocumented. You know, it's hard, so it's good that people do take those steps to teach their children what they may not learn in school, because, with the education system now we got Betsy DeVos in there. Okay. We'll be lucky if they'll be able to count to 20, much less learn about Juneteenth or anything else like that. So.
Yeah, I agree with Mercedes, and I think she touched on my opinion. Really the parents taking the initiative and just showing that it really, the only way that a child can be raised properly is to have a parent who is right within themselves and has a proper awareness of the world. And I think so many parents don't, all race sides in America. And, we have our own individual problems with the children that are growing up in this society. My people being that we all want to make our children our friends, and that they don't have that respect ingrained to them, and it's really causing problems in terms of success in the world, because it's not realistic to raise your child as your friend. But it's just, I think any race can raise another child of a different race, but really what is the mindset of that person when they're undertaking that task, and what should be conveyed, and that really is the question to me.
Which is true, because a child could be in a household, again, no matter what color they are, they could be learning abuse, dad beating mom, absorbing other bad knowledge, and that child will turn around and be an abusive husband to his wife. I mean, there are a lot of things that children are learning in their household, again, no matter what race they are, that has nothing to do with race, bad habits, drinking, or anything like that, alcoholism, whatever, just bad things. So I think it does depend on the person, because this black family who has adopted these 9 white kids or 8 white kids, and this white family that adopted these 2 black children, as picturesque as they may be to the public, they could have a terrible life behind those doors. Luckily, that wasn't the case, because I think they had to go through the whole trial process and, make sure the kids were in great stand, and the kids, both sets of kids were ecstatic about their parents, and you could tell it wasn't fake. So that's how they gain, these kids legally through the adoption system. But there are other things out there. Like, there was this one family, they were I don't know if they were Amish or they were some weird religious group, and they were white, and they had their 2 or 3 white children, and they adopted 3 or 4 black children. They were all siblings, and they killed one of them because it had something to do with their religion, almost like a God said so type thing. It was like, God told me to beat my children, and they beat all their kids, including their white children. It's just that they beat one so bad, one of the little black girls died. So that's that example of, it may be picturesque on the outside, but within that household, they're teaching them some stuff that has to do with the religion that doesn't have to do with religion, and that's a total different type of mindset that person has that the next white person or black person that's adopting of a different race may not have. So. Yeah, that was a scary one. That was terrible.
But I don't want to go ahead and say that people make too big a deal about it as far as heritage goes when you're raising another child, because the whole point to me is just to make sure that they're okay. So even if a white family adopts a black child and they don't even know who Medgar Evers is, that's okay. So long as they're going to grow up and be well-adjusted and, be productive members of society, it doesn't matter if they know who Medgar Evers is or know what Juneteenth is or anything like that. It's good if they do, because now here's my thing. If they're interested in where they come from and stuff like that, and their parents are okay with them learning all that, that's great too. But to me, it's not 100% necessary if they're taking care of the kids and showing them love and teaching them good values.
Which is very true. That definitely should come first, because we definitely live in a society where values and morale and all that stuff is pretty low. So if a parent is doing at least that much, everything else will fall into place. I do believe that. But I do believe that at some point, a little bit, the parents of the different races teach their children or expose them to a little bit of their own culture, and let the rest, they're going to learn in college anyway, a little bit, maybe not a lot, but they'll definitely, see different groups of people and the diversity there, even if they don't see, completely in their household.
Oh, you don't want them to learn. You don't want them to learn in college first.
Well, college is the last place you really want to learn anything about life values. But that's how it goes sometimes. I mean that goes back to, again, without race, a sheltered child who mama really didn't let them go anywhere until they go to college, and they turn out to be some alcoholic sorority girl or frat boy, and just
yeah, baby.
That's no different.
I mean, we brought up a lot of perspectives today, but the key I always like to get to is what is the solution? What can we do differently to improve the situation?
And that's always the tough part, because there's no one answer. Every situation ends up being a little bit different. Like, I have friends who have biracial kids who were bullied, when they were teenagers, for being biracial. Yeah.
But yeah, I will agree with that one. I see a lot of little biracial children who have pink hair just as kinky as mine, and their hair is not done most of the time. So, yeah.
My nephew is half Indian, and he has really long hair, and he got teased a lot because they said he looks like a girl. So he ended up cutting his hair. And I was mad at him. Well, more mad at his mom. I'm like, why you let the little boy cut his hair just because they were teasing him? His hair looks awesome,
Right.
But I mean, granted, he's like 10, so that sort of thing it's a different matter altogether. If he was a teenager, he'd probably just be like, yeah, whatever. But as a 10-year-old, these sorts of things do matter, And it's hard to teach racism to children. It really is. Because you don't want them to grow up to be cynical or to hate other people, It's more of like, and then that's why I said there's no single answer to this, because everybody is different. So there are some kids who you could teach things about racism to, and they'll be well adjusted, and there's some others who you may teach them that same way, and then they just may become cynical and even a little bit hateful of it. So it all depends on the kid, what the kid can take and what the kid can't take. So there's no single answer, but I do agree that something needs to be done. So at least, not as far as the method, but at least let them know, hey, this is something that you may need to teach your kids, And you don't want them to learn it on television. It needs to come from someone that they love and respect.
Agreed. Totally agree. Someone that they're going to listen to, and even if that means you need to learn it to teach it.
Right.
And back to the original question.
Mm-hmm.
Should black militants date outside their race? And does it impact the movement when they do so?
It shouldn't, but it does. Because,
like I said, as long as, again, I'm all about respect. Sometimes, and in the case that we used earlier, he didn't even respect her, and all based upon his, beliefs and, being so pro-black, he didn't even respect her skin color. And then on the other side of it, he may not have disrespected black women, but there are other men that disrespect black women and place, white women on this pedestal that, again, is still disrespectful. So disrespectful to the white woman and disrespectful to women, period. So I feel like, yes, they can date outside of their race as long as there's respect for who they are, where they came from, and who they're with. And normally, no one meets those three things. They forget everything. You're so pro-black, but, there's always one. One is going to be pro-black and respect his black side and disrespect the white side, so why even be with a white woman to begin with? And then the other type is going to disrespect his black women and put white women on this spineless pedestal. So like they're spineless and just do whatever. So I don't think there's ever going to be a point where it's going to be
black
win-win.
man to date a white woman and they be like evenly yoked. Or respected across the board, because I remember, I ain't gonna lie, I've dated all kinds of women. The only women I haven't dated is probably Asian, and I try to keep. I don't think I treat them as they're submissive or disrespect. You know, black women. My mom is a black woman. I mean, my aunt's a black woman. You know what I'm saying?
Which is true, but I'm pretty sure you've come across in life men of your same skin color who blatantly disrespect black women, but still want to, you know, claim that they're Hebrew Israelite or something, and then date white women, but behind the white woman's back call her Edomite. You see what I'm saying? Call her people Edomite. Do you get what I'm saying?
I must have a very sheltered life because I do know some, very few though, very little exposure to that type of man. That's not the kind of person I particularly care to hang around or be around or associate myself with.
Which is a good thing, but I mean, I'm just saying these type of men really, they totally exist. Like they do stuff like that. I've met men like that. So one minute they're all pro-black, we're the original this, we're that, and then they'll be with a white woman, call her people Edomites, but be with her today and have kids with her, or his brother, you know, or someone else in their little, you know, crew will do the opposite. He will, you know, completely put down white people and uphold a black woman and act as if no other race exists. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's always going to be a problem either way. And as far as being equally yoked, I don't know. And I don't think it's because of the woman. I think it's because of the man's mindset and which type of man we're talking about.
Well, it all depends on what pro-black means to that man. Because if pro-black means anti-white, then that's a huge difference. If pro-black just means, hey, you know, looking into our culture and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if being pro-black to them means anti-white, then it's not going to work. You know, so like you said, why would they even bother dating someone outside their race in the first place if they feel it's that way? And I don't feel that pro-black is anti-white, but a lot of people, like especially in the news media, see it that way, and they paint that in people's minds, and then it ends up. So even if you have somebody who doesn't feel that way, that it feels it's anti-white, because that whole stigma is out there that if he's pro-black, then he hates white people. Why is he dating that white woman? That makes things more difficult. So I think it might have to start with the messaging, you know, that pro-black is not, you know, anti-other races.
I think specifically in our case, it was not something blatantly done. It wasn't like a conscious decision. It was, you know, he was very intimate and loving towards me in private or in more general settings, but, you know, like it was only in these settings, you know, where he would have close friends who were pro-black, you know, that he would be hesitant. I don't even think he was aware of it, and that's why it took him so long to kind of come to terms with how he felt. It was a subconscious thing, but I will say that since he sort of, after we dated, you know, come out publicly and pretty openly about having dated a white woman and how he doesn't think it's a problem, there has been like a lot of flack towards him and just a lot of disrespectful attitudes and people not being accepting. And I will say, you know, out of the people who are, especially the women who are friends with him and who knew we dated, you know, they hated me. His family, they were nice to me at first, but, you know, like I'm like white trash to them. And like they don't know where I came from or anything like that, but it's just like, you know, out of the other people that have been in his life, it seemed like it was more okay for him to be with black women. But then when it was with me, it was just like there was definitely a lot of, I guess it wasn't palpable towards me, but he was very ashamed and put shame down for that. I mean, I guess he was ashamed unconsciously, but I'm saying that the response by the community from what I had seen and from what was said was one of shame.
And here's the point, and here's the thing where I differ, because I know he's part of some movement, if that's right, and maybe what they say does matter, but it shouldn't. Like if I find someone who I'm in love with who's not of my race, and the quote-unquote community has a problem with that, the community can quote-unquote kiss my black ass. It's done, you know? But it all depends on how deep he is in that community and who that community consists of. So I don't know that part of it, so it's easy for me to say that when I don't know the whole situation. So if I'm out of line, just let me know. But I guess it's because I'm a bit older. I'm in my mid-40s. So when I hit 40, I stop caring. I'm at the point now where I just do what I want to. So if I date someone who's not who's not of my race, and other people have a problem, other people can kiss my ass, and that's the end of it, and I just go on. But now I might not have been able to say that if I was in my 20s, or I would even dare I say it in my 30s. It may have been a different situation for me back then.
Right.
You know, the community might have mattered more back then. So
let's be honest, do we even know our neighbors? Do we even know our community? I lived in my community, my present community, for the last four years. I don't know a single neighbor. Oh, I might say hi and bye and wave at you as I walk my dog or something, but I don't know your name and you don't know mine, unless you see it on my license tag. Right. And you just saw the car I drive.
And that's why I was saying that it all depends on who the community consists of. Because if it just consists of just, now if it consists of people close to you, they should just know that, they should know better, But it all depends on who is in his community that makes him feel that way, to make him act differently to someone who he cares about. Right. So they may have more of a hold on him than he was willing to admit.
All right, final words. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Emma.
I think I will say that it was an issue of maturity and wanting to have that approval from the people that he loved so much, because it was I was the first white woman that he dated, and I think it was how the other gentleman mentioned, I didn't catch her name, like, when you love someone, you love them, and it may not be the package that you wanted it to come in, but if that is what you need and what you desire, and it comes to you, you kind of just have to accept it. Right. Or not accept it and miss out. But, once he kind of got his own sense of things and maturity, he has since come out and how he feels towards me. He doesn't just date white women anymore. He dates every kind of woman, but he will publicly say that he thinks it's wrong. And that means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that you all give these opinions, because I think maybe what the issue is that people are kind of stuck on the past and some of the other mentalities, maybe from like the 1980s, whenever there was that surge of mingling and kind of looked down upon after that. But I think that just hearing how you all have been educated and can see beyond that, it means a lot to me.
Oh, that's not a problem at all.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming on the Urban Breakdown, collective from 300. Oh, this is 360 degrees. I'm sorry, 360 degrees. A component of the Urban Breakdown. Sorry. It's been a long week.
Are we on final words?
Final words. We'll start with, I guess that might have been Emma's, but we'll start with Emma, our featured guest for today. Emma, final words.
Well, I guess as to the topic of white privilege, I would say that, yes, I do believe it's a systemic issue. I believe that the only way it can be tempered against, or even begin to be addressed, is through awareness, specifically even more so immersion. I would say that people don't want to become aware, or they will not become aware of something that's not in their lives. So I think the issue of interracial dating in particular will bring forth this for a lot of people. White families who never had an encounter, a significant encounter with a black person who now has a family member who's black, may begin to understand that, because, just because you see it on the media and just because it's in front of your face doesn't mean you'll understand, doesn't mean you'll take the time to watch, because why should you care? It's dying your life, and that's just against our nature as humans to go against our values. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that's the right thing. I'm sorry?
My final word is we should just all love each other and try to understand one another. No matter how different we all are, we are actually all the same.
I would agree.
Mercer.
And my final word is this: we're just going to keep it simple. In order to progress, we're going to have those difficult, uncomfortable conversations. Because if not, we're just going to end up in the status quo.
Hello, yes?
Yeah.
Final word?
Yes, I would say that, along with everything that everyone else has said, is that we have to look beyond the epidermis and look at that person and look at the character. Because when it's all said and done, I want good neighbors. I want a good relationship. I want a good friend. And I don't care what the packaging looks like. And if that packaging looks like me and it's abusive, I don't want it. If it doesn't look like me and it's subscribed to justice, morality, peace, love, joy, yeah, you can be my friend.
Hey, Najee, there's a friend of yours who has a great book about an alternative timeline involving African Americans. Can you give the listeners some information about that?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a book called Looking Over Black Shoulders, and in that book, it is an alternative America, and it is a book completely filled with vivid pictures portraying whites going through the civil rights movement, just coming out of slavery. I actually hired actors to play the part. So the book is full of these pictures that look real. You wouldn't think any differently if you saw the book. You'd be like, okay, wow, this actually happened, but it didn't. It's historical fiction, and I think that the whole purpose is not to so much to get revenge as it is to create awareness and sort of put people in a position where they're vulnerable, where they can look at an experience that has happened, because most of the books that we have now, most of it depicts blacks going through it. And I think that's a big problem. We need a balance, and we need a balance that shows that this could happen to anybody regardless who holds the whip. At the end of the day, you'll discover that all the core issues remain the same. So I'll be releasing a press release probably within the next week or so. And I think the time is perfectly right now to put it back out there.
There you go.
Okay.
And my final words is, in the famous words of En Vogue, free your mind, and the rest will follow. Watch out, man. And that concludes another episode of 360 Degrees. Subscribe to it if you have not via your podcast app on your phone, tablet, or via website under the name The Urban Breakdown. The Urban Breakdown, with hit shows, award-winning shows such as 360 Degrees and the multi-award-winning show Politics. Stay tuned for new shows such as He Said, She Said, and also BPM, Black Power Movement, Beats Per Minute, where we interview artists regarding their perspective on relevant worldviews. And thank you for listening to another episode of 360 Degrees, with this episode being focused on white privilege.
Yeah, I walk like this cause I'm the shit. And bitch, I talk like this cause I'm the shit. And can't no other bitch shut it down like this. So let the band play while I talk my shit. Cause bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. You were way too concerned with your position in the city, while I was in New York taking trips, sitting pretty. Catch vouch for that top 10 DJ Envy. You say you're making moves, but ain't really fucking with me. I took some time off just to let you do your thing, and now a bitch back and ain't a damn thing changed. I see you switch your style, little color in your hair. You're trying to find sex appeal that clearly isn't there. Me, muggy looking funny when I come around. Cringing at the fact, Sadie Hawkins stole the crown. Bitches wanna see me fall, knock me off my grind. Now watch me spit my rhyme on the real drum line, bitch. I walk like this cause I'm the shit. And bitch, I talk like this cause I'm the shit. And can't no other bitch shut it down like this. So let the band play while I talk my shit. Cause bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. It's time for a road change. Got these hoes standing in the line. So Soul Train. I don't even know these bitches. No names. Make these bitches pull their hair out. Road gang. I'm a sedity bitch. Run the whole city, bitch. I get that dirty money. Niggas thinking that I'm Diddy's bitch. I'm on my nigga shit. Swag so ignorant. All these hoes dumbfounded, dumb, belligerent. Dudes wanna wife it. Chicks wanna bite it. And I might just let them and give a fuck who don't like it. S-A-D-I, 10 like Eli. These hoes stay playing, but I'm serious. I walk like this cause I'm the shit. And bitch, I talk like this cause I'm the shit. And can't no other bitch shut it down like this. So let the band play while I talk my shit. Cause bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Bitch, I'm a cocky motherfucker. Cocky motherfucker. Sit down, you know word around the city. Sadie Hawkins is the hottest, and you know the chicks are ditty. I step up on the scene feeling like $1 million bucks. I hate to be you, yeah, I know your life sucks. I never been a hater, get credit to where it's due for all my cocky motherfuckers. I made this one for you. You can vouch for that, or you can vouch for this. So let the band play while I talk my shit. Yeah, I walk like this cause I'm the shit. And bitch, I talk like this cause I'm the shit. And can't no other bitch shut it down like this. So let